Yeah, so New Line Cinema, this one, probably one of the few that isn't owned by Disney just yet, or it probably is.
Oh, they're owned by somebody. They were talking about it on the Never Sleep Again documentary about the chronicling the making of the Elm Street, Nightmare on Elm Street films. They're owned by someone now. I think it might be Warner Brothers.
Would this be one of the first movies to come from a comic book that has Dark Horse on it?
It's kind of an interesting one because they also were the publishers of Time Cop. So it's kind of um, interesting that these two
Came out the
movies,
same year.
yeah, but also based on fairly obscure comic book properties. I think Time Cop only ran for a handful of issues, and I don't think The Mask was ever an ongoing series. It was more like a series of miniseries that were published kind of sporadically, um, sort of in the late 80s, early 90s. So the fact that they came out and were fairly huge movies, it's quite interesting. And beating films like X-Men to the punch and, Watchmen and
Probably
that's
because they are obscure allows them to bypass a lot of the schlock when it comes to getting a film off the ground. Like
yeah,
like it's not caught in like a bidding war for rights or anything like that.
yeah, that's right. Spider-Man was stuck in a legal quagmire for a long time, and X-Men and Watchmen and that were in development like since the 80s. It just took ages to finally get produced. But
Yeah,
it
and
is interesting.
Spider-Man was probably
And
the big one.
yeah, and even like The Crow came hot on the heels of this, and that was another. I mean, it was well known in comic book circles, but it's not like your Spider-Man and Superman and that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, and outside of the Punisher, I don't think Marvel had actually had a comic book film, at least not one of their higher caliber ones, had made it to the screen yet. Like I know Blade rocked up towards the tail end of the decade of the '90s, but like their A-list material really didn't start kicking off till the 2000s. One thing about Ipkiss here with Stanley, Jim Carrey, is that when he opened the drawer to get the tickets out, I thought it was cool that he had a Looney Tunes comic in his desk at work.
Yeah,
Kind of a character trait of his, always kind of having a delight for cartoons. Um,
yeah. I love the name Stanley Ipkiss. I have this sort of my own little personal theory. A superhero's name, it's the most ordinary, boring. You think like Clark Kent or Bruce Wayne. Like if you had a list of names, you wouldn't even look twice at a name like that. But they're pretty like amazing superheroes. So I quite like his name because it really belongs in that pantheon, doesn't it? Like Stanley Ipkiss.
yeah, Stanley Ipkiss.
It just seems like a name you wouldn't even look twice at.
Yeah, I do kind of miss that. Yeah, everyone sounds like John Smith. Like even the villains are like that. Like Victor Von Doom. I mean, like in Eastern Europe, like that's John Smith. And I believe this is Cameron Diaz's film debut as well. She had never been in a film prior to this. I think she's only like 21.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. um, yeah, in the supermarket of love, she's a dollar dazzler. And this is pre something about Mary as well.
Yeah, she was just a powerhouse during this era. Charlie's Angels as well. I, it's another one as well. I don't know who we talked about, but I can't even remember the last thing I saw her in because she seemed to
Hasn't
be,
she retired from acting now? She's doing something else, I think.
yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, you could be right.
Oh, I mean, well, like being 30 years into an acting career and being in your 50s now, it's hard to imagine you've got any more ladders to climb, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not. Yeah, like I said, I'm not sure. I'd have to, look up some of her recent work if she's still in the industry. Yeah.
It's pretty cool with Ipkiss, like in his regular civilian clothes, and they make a point of it here um, when she grabs the tie in just a bit. Like that's not really. I mean, it's probably the norm these days, but back then, like it's not like a single solitary color. Like it's this kind of ink blot and he does it a couple of times throughout the film. Like, he's got this vibrancy with colors in his regular everyday clothes.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like he's in a costume, even though he's not wearing the mask yet.
Yeah. With the distinctive ties and that kind of stuff.
And pretty cool, like having a day job as a bank clerk. I'm trying to think in the big two, like DC and Marvel, was there ever an alter ego that had that occupation?
Yeah. Yeah, it's another one of those. Yeah, just a sort of regular, everyday kind of job that wouldn't arouse a whole lot of suspicion. No one would ever suspect this guy would go on to be a superhero.
Yeah, and even if you want to call it that, like, I know the source material, which it's one of those things that a lot of people like to get hung up on these days. A lot of critics out there like to, and fans alike, typically go oh yeah, well, it's not faithful to the source material and all that. Well, from what I gather, this version of Stanley Ipkiss is next to nothing like the one that shows up in the comic. Like, the one from the comic is just this real despicable human being, and you're kind of glad that he gets killed.
Yeah, I've been meaning to. I haven't got around to it yet. I do want to source a copy of the comics. It has been released in some omnibus editions. I've found a few, but they're not quite the right deal yet. Because the story sounds great in the comic, and because what I liked about it, I was under the impression, just sort of reading a brief description, they're just sort of standalone stories. But the first couple of miniseries, once another person takes ownership of the mask, it then sort of follows that story. They're not kind of isolated standalone ones. It sounds interesting, but yeah, this was I was reading Chuck Russell, the director. He really wanted to lighten it up and sort of embrace a bit more of a zany, crazier story. And it's a good point you make about the source material. One thing I was reading about this new Crow movie is they're going to be very faithful to the source material. I don't know if it was true or not, but one of the reasons why the first film was so good is like it sort of takes the basic gist of the story, and it's a lot more stylish, and they do a lot more different things. It's not a slavish remake. It's not a slavish adaptation. So it's probably why, and I believe even Time Cop as well is quite different to the original comic. It's based on, like, these things probably would never have got made if they're just hopelessly devoted to adapting the comic. So Peter Greene, the villain.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, Peter Greene. The only other, they kind of wheel him out for the mafia villain. But, I mean, having said that, though, like, he nails it every time he does it. The only other film that comes to mind off the top of my head was with Martin Lawrence and Luke Wilson in Blue Streak. He was a villain in that as well.
Yeah, I remember him as Redfoot in The Usual Suspects, and he was also one of the henchmen in Under Siege 2, Dark Territory.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I love the street and the design and feel of Edge City. I'm not too sure where it was filmed. That harbour shot in the beginning with the mask, it's like sepia-toned everything. And you see these random billboards and all this kind of stuff. I really like how Edge City, it's like this massive conglomeration of just randomness.
Yeah.
Like, you've got like a bank across the street from this place, across the street from this like supply store that was behind Ipkiss when he walked in. Like, there's just a bunch of, like, you'd never see that all in a row anywhere in real life.
Yeah. Jim Carrey's such a master at actually using props. He's been in 2 scenes now, and yeah, it's hard to remember to keep talking. It's watching a master in action. I always sort of try to pay attention to how actors actually use props, but the way he used the bell and him sitting at his desk just before, he's an absolute master at using his surroundings. And like
the desk, giving the desk a jam as well.
Yeah, and I like that was the sort of crowning moment. But what he was doing in the lead up to that was brilliant as well. He's just an absolute master. He's at the top of his game.
And I mean, and what a triple threat for this year in particular as well.
Yeah, and it's hard to imagine like anyone else in this role. I know that's like a cliche saying that at this point, but
Well, it's one of those things where unless Jim Carrey takes the role of Stanley and the Mask, this film just doesn't happen. You know, like it's that kind of thing.
yeah,
Which very much so, like behind closed doors and all of that, when they were casting it, it probably came down to that. Like, unless Jim Carrey does it, it doesn't happen.
yeah, he's has such a great career, and like, I can't imagine anyone in the Ace Ventura movies or Cable Guy or anything really.
Yeah, the range of the guy is just ridiculous. Like it's funny how people say, "Oh yeah, Jim Carrey." Like I don't really like his style. He's zany. He's over the top. He's this, that, and the other. I'm like, have you been following the gent like at all? Like you're surprised that's what happens. And again, I know I gush over this all the time, but the color palette for this film is unreal. Like you got the purples in the window, you got the blue of the nightlight, you got the neon palm tree at the front of the Coco Bongo. Like this film is pretty much the epitome of what I consider awesome color palette. Probably my favorite film that does it. Like it, not only does it use them in the background, but it incorporates them into the main figures of the shot very well.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's something you
look at.
yeah. Like it's something you see in comics a lot. Like the colors they use for the background of a panel. Like I like it when they take those colors and incorporate them into the main figure of the panel as well. This film is just awesome at doing that. And I like how he gets turfed and then the valet drives up to him in the gutter. and like just total steel face. I thought it was pretty cool that he manages bank loans, and the car that they give him is called the Loner. And I only just picked up on that just then. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, this is brilliant. And this bridge here, again, is another sort of thing that makes its way into other superhero films. We get that bridge sequence in the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
Yeah,
These kind of like cable car railway sort of over river bridges. Like they pretty much a mainstay in a lot of comic book films. I'm sure we've all had nights like this where even before things all went bad, you just know the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Like, I mean, he wasn't even all that thrilled about going out in the first place. Like, oh, I don't know, Charlie. Like, he wasn't keen at all on this idea. And look at what's happened since he went.
oh, that's great.
Yeah, and how the car just immediately falls apart and just, yeah, total write-off. I think everyone can relate to this. Like, this has got to be the ultimate clip moment here. Just literally palm your trouble away. It's just not even worth it. And something else as well that I find really cool about this film is that, as far as pacing goes, it's probably the best comic book film ever in terms of its pacing. Just no mucking around. It really encapsulates. It's there for a good time, not a long time.
Yeah, Chuck Russell directed this, and he has a solid kind of body of work. He directed Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, and a lot of people consider that the best of the bunch, even better than the original. He did the remake of The Blob in the late 1980s, and I really like that movie.
Was that the 88 one? I think it was 88 it came out. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, 88 or 89, I think. He did Eraser, Bless the Child. I remember Kim Basinger was in that from memory. That wasn't too bad. So they're all really solid films that don't outstay their welcome. So he's probably, real highly aware of, keeping the story moving. So. And it's really to the film's benefit.
Whereas this is one of those things where it needs its own segment of if it came out today. Like if The Mask was made today with Jim Carrey and he was in the same age, like if he was still, I think he's about 30, 31 in this film. Like if it was made today, he would sign like an 18 picture deal to be Stanley Ipkiss for the next 20 years of his life. And the first hour and a half of this film would be explaining the origins of the mask. Like, we don't need to know where it came from. Like the chest, why is it locked away in a chest and all that kind of stuff, and why were those guys looking for it and breaking it open, and the divers at the start. I mean, maybe Mahone sent them down there, to dredge the river. We don't need to know where it came from. All we need to know is where it's going.
Yeah, and the film does drop a few hints a little later on, and that's perfectly fine. And yeah, but that's just the way things are now. Like, unless it's got franchise potential, it probably won't get up. At least not like in a big mainstream movie.
This little statue here of the cartoon dog, just remember that, because there's something cool happens a bit later with that. Or maybe it's my own headcanon. One thing I love about this set of Ipkiss, the apartment, are some of the things that are in it. Like the computer, the counter, the what's in the closet, when he hides the money in there a bit later. Yeah, and like the dog whistling here, which is something that he goes on to do when he does go into the club the next night.
Yeah, it's all really good stuff, this.
I miss animal actors, but I remember you saying something, and again, there's a lot of foreshadowing in this one scene alone, especially with the frisbee. He throws the frisbee, and that's the A side, and the payoff of it comes a bit later in the film. Yeah, I remember you saying, like, when it came to films like Call of the Wild with Harrison Ford and all of that, with a CGI dog, the reason for that is because having real animal actors now is just so difficult. Like, there's so much red tape around it. Like, it's harder to hire an animal actor than it is to get a real human.
Yeah, there's a real art and skill to it. It's yeah. I was reading a book about it a couple of months ago about some of the sort of famous movies that have had dogs in them, and how they were treated and how they were trained and things like that. And it gets even crazier. I was watching the 1930 The Most Dangerous Game, and they hired an actual leopard that actually got loose. And I shouldn't laugh, but it was just such a unbelievable story. The trainer lost control of it, and you had like cast and crew climbing the bloody rafters to try and get away from it. They lost a day or two trying to corral it back into a cage. It's just mental.
Yeah, and like the spiders of arachnophobia as well. They had to use like temperatures in rooms to influence where the spiders went when they were making the shot.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
And again, no mucking around. Like, he probably would have picked up the mask and sat it in the cupboard if it came out today, and he would have left it there for the next 45 minutes, and then put it on in the finale. And then that would have been it. And then we'll have all the behind the scenes saying, oh, well, you got to see where it's going. One thing, he wears the mask 3 times in the film, and obviously the yellow zoot suit is probably the most iconic attire this version of the character ever wears, but every single one of his costumes is an absolute banger in this. Like, I like the kind of 1950 smoking jacket that he's got on here, like the kind of leisure wear that you would wear like as an aristocrat.
Yeah, and it's something that took me aback because I haven't revisited the movie in a while. Yeah, you kind of forget he does wear other costumes because like you just mentioned, the yellow suit now is just so ubiquitous whenever you see the character, and it's the one he wears in the animated series, which was a follow-up to this as well.
Which ran for 3 years.
Yeah, I think I have the collection of it somewhere around here.
Yeah, I picked it up earlier this year, and it's not too bad at all. You can clearly tell why it ran for as long as it did.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad, I remember from memory.
It's pretty cool that an alarm clock spoils his fun here to begin this. And there's a trope that seems to happen throughout the film, is that he's usually constantly tardy for work. So the fact that an alarm clock sprung out of his pocket when it did and then he's late for work the next day. I kind of like that. Like, again, the film's really good for the A-sides and B-sides like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably one of the coolest gizmos that he uses. Because I remember the video game that came out for the Super Nintendo where, you had like kind of a power meter, and some of the things that the mask could let you do, whenever you pulled out that horn, like it would take a big chunk of your power, but if you were ever in a boss fight, it got you out of a tight spot pretty quickly.
Yeah, okay.
Black Pearl Software develop it, which, I miss that because obviously that doesn't exist anymore, or it's been liquidated into something else. Yeah, clocks just seem to be a big thing with the mask in this film, like being late. There's he just used a stopwatch on this guy. In the climax of the film, there's dynamite on a timer. Like clocks just seem to be a really big element with Ipkiss.
Yeah.
And you gotta love the skits as well. And again, like, this is another costume as well.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All this stuff is great.
I mean, I probably should talk about the prosthetics that they've applied to him. Apparently, the dentures, like the oversized teeth and all of that, that's all legit. He learned to speak with the dentures in.
Yeah, okay.
Like, that's why he suddenly got that accent. So he could talk with the teeth in, and it's so cool.
Yeah, this is all really good stuff.
Like, it's like a detail that would probably go over most people's heads. Like if they were doing the film today, he'd put the mask on and he'd sound just like he does regularly. You know, like they wouldn't make a point to add that kind of extra layer.
Yeah.
I love this set with the circus lights. And this is kind of a bit of a throwback to the comics. Like, he's using gunfire on people.
Yeah, the comics are pretty full on, just on what I've sort of read the description of. So I do have to make a note to pick up an omnibus. I'd like to read all of them.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the alter ego itself, regardless of who it's on, is the star of the show, which is probably why it follows a bunch of other people. This is really cool when he makes the notion of maybe becoming a superhero, but the first thing he does, he literally says, "but first," and then goes and does something incredibly selfish with his powers like this. I just thought it was so cool.
Yeah, which is what sort of, it is a tenet of the hero's journey. When they get given great power, their first thought is to use it for personal gain and personal profit, or even just straight up revenge. I mean, that's what Tony Stark does. As soon as he escapes with the suit, he flies right back there to get square.
Yeah, that's true, doesn't he? Yeah, I forgot about that.
Peter Parker, and he tries to become a wrestler. So this is quite sort of within the realm of superhero fiction.
I always like how, with the exception to the later transformations that he does, he seems to black out whenever it's done doing its thing. So like, using the mask is just on par with a night of heavy drinking. It seems to me. Like, he wakes up in bed and, like, he's a bit slow off the bat and all of that, can't really remember a whole lot of what happened.
Yeah, and he's really good with these, the morning after, the night before. My other favourite one is in Liar Liar, when he's unaware the kids put the hex on him. I've had better. He's going about his day brushing his teeth, continually laughing at it. I've had better.
Yeah. I was going to say, when he says "I've had better" after having sex with his superior, and she throws him out, and then he says "I've had better" in a questioning tone. My favourite moment was always when he's brushing the teeth and he's looking at himself in the mirror, smirking at himself. I've had better.
Yeah, I've had better.
The toothbrush one was the best. Peter Reigert here is Lieutenant Calloway. I love how Edge City operates as a cartoon in pretty much every aspect, not just with the mask. Like, he comes home and he's got this over-the-top landlady He's got a dog that it seems way too smart for real life. He's got this boss who's just pounding on him all the time in such ridiculous ways. He's got a friend who's betting women that are just totally out of his league. Like, Edge City, everything in this film is just turned up to 11 as the same way a cartoon does, with the exception of Detective Calloway. Like, he's the only one who's acting like a real person in this whole thing, and he's the one who comes up short. It's an awesome kind of character beat. Like, I like when films do that. They do have one grounded character, but that's why nothing really seems to go their way.
Yeah. It's another masterful use. Again, I don't want to harp on it, but the way Jim Carrey treats props is second to none. When he was given the business card, it was just excellent the way he used that to really strengthen the scene.
Yeah, so he throws this out the window because it was a real nice ski mask. Yeah. I love the Tassie Devil pillow there. Most notable character trait is spinning around really quick, and you'll notice that the mask does that as its main mode of transport whenever he's wearing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just on the clock thing real quick, apparently there was a deleted scene there when they ask him, hey mister, you got the time, when the punks corner him in the street. Was that the reason he's all muddied up and, really disheveled wasn't because of the river fetching the mask. It was because Stanley actually does get mugged in a deleted scene and they take his watch off of him. So when the landlady asked, do you know what time it is? Actually, no. Because they did jump him earlier, which, although it didn't make the film, again, clocks and time is a really big thing with the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy, well, if you weren't busy oogling girly pictures, I'm guilty of that as well. I'm sure my productivity would definitely increase if I stopped window shopping on women. Yeah. I don't know, maybe I'll become a lingerie designer or something. Channel my energies a bit better.
This guy's great as well, the boss.
Yeah, I know. And the fact that he's like 10 years younger than Carey is just so much better. Like, having a younger boss who's a knob. Yeah. I'm glad I can say that I've never fallen into that trap, but I know some people who have, and it is as annoying as you'd think it is. Yeah, Charlie is a bit of a bigger deal in the cartoon as well. I quite like how the cartoon was an adaptation of this, and it didn't try to channel a bit more of the darker things from the comic. And in fact, with the exception of Tina not returning, and I understand why they did that for the cartoon, it's pretty much one for one the exact same continuity. Like, I can totally buy the cartoon version of Stanley being the Jim Carrey Stanley.
Because Tina's not in it, but this character isn't she?
Yeah, Peggy's back, which is interesting because there's another deleted moment where Dorian kills her. But they took that out, so... and they do kind of explain away when she backstabs him. They do kind of palm that off, and I thought it was pretty cool. And I know why Tina doesn't return, and Dorian stays dead as well in the cartoon, because I mean you do get a bit more fun out of Stanley when he's a single, like when he's a bachelor.
Yeah,
and he has zero luck with women. Like, you do get a lot more out of him in that regard. So I don't mind regressing the character in that regard. I mean, they probably could have kept Tina around, but I can understand. It does kind of put you on a bit of a short leash when the guy's meant to be a love-crazy wild man, as Stanley describes later in the film. So, yeah, the cartoon, wise move, I think, doing that.
Yeah.
Like, the guy literally wrote "Nice guys finish last." Well, like, another, like, I mean, I suppose people would analyze his courting strategies and his dating strategies, going, "Oh, he's being a simp." I mean, if you're looking at it through a 2024 lens, 30 years after the fact, I suppose that's what they would call it. I love the way Jim Carrey played at the start of the film when he gave the concert tickets away. "I think I'm wearing her down." Oh, good stuff.
Yeah, and because the production design doesn't really give anything away, it's came out in 1994, but there's nothing sort of overly present so far that gives that away, because you got the sort of the way the sets are all dressed and things like that. Like if someone had told me this came out in 98 or 99, I'd believe them.
No, someone told me this came out in '03. I'd probably still believe them.
Yeah, it's so it's quite good. It has held up really well.
See,
Even a lot of the effects to a certain extent have held up.
yeah, what I love the most, I was just about to bring that up when people talk about, oh yeah, the CGI, oh yeah, it's just poor, like and like they talk about it, but I think that actually helps it the older that it gets, because unlike something like Jurassic Park, which was released a year prior, this is meant to be like the real life interpretation of a cartoon. So the things you see are so zany and over the top, like pulling these giant missile launchers out of your pockets and things like that. It doesn't need cutting edge, timeless CGI to make that look. In fact, I think the fact that it looks so it's clearly not there only helps that effect, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm probably in the minority on that one. But I think the fact that the CG is as dated as it is only helps what it was trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got to have the boss of the boss here.
Yeah, for a moment I thought it was Armand Desante, but it's not.
Well, Nico's only in like 2 scenes of this film. There's this one, and when he's at the fundraiser at the end,
Yeah.
at the Coco Bongo. I don't believe he shows up again after that. I mean, but Dorian's the main ticket on the antagonist side,
Yeah.
because you look at what Stanley does for a living compared to what he's doing for a living. Like racketeering and all this kind of stuff, and both involving money. Like he even puts out a hit on the mask before he realizes who it is. Just it really is the kind of yin yang of it, which the film makes a point of, is that what if it gets on someone who's truly evil? Well, we do see what happens in that regard when Dorian puts it on. So yeah, like Nico's brought in just sort of a bit of more of a push for Dorian, but he's clearly the main villain of the piece. He just foils with Stanley so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do quite like the dream sequence, because a lot of films, like, it's a narrative that a lot of films these days use the dream as a twist, but I love how it shows him in bed and it fades into the dream, and so it's a dream. Now, just to go back to the dog statue that I made a mention of in the flat, he's doing the exact same pose as that statue was doing.
Yeah, right. That's it. That is a good catch. Yeah.
You catch him there with the cigarette. Like, that's exactly what the dog statue was doing when he first entered the apartment. Like, there's tons of foreshadowing in the apartment scene at the beginning of the film, and I absolutely love that. Like, I mean, don't drop the breadcrumbs if there's nowhere to go. There's another little Easter egg here that someone pointed out that cracked me up. If you look at the left-hand side of Stanley's bed, there's peanut butter there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so what? He must be getting the dog to lick it off or something? Yeah, someone pointed that out. I've never noticed that before. There's a jar of peanut butter there next to the lamp. I'm like, oh my god. I wonder if Jim Carrey put that there just as a gag.
He's great in the dream sequences. The Dumb and Dumber one is just top tier, as good as it gets.
And the Dumb and Dumber 2 one is pretty good as well. Yeah, the nightmare scene in the cable guy is another one. Another dream sequence where Jim Carrey is just so cool.
Yeah.
This is probably the big kind of payoff of the... Like, I don't know many films that peak at the middle point. Like, a lot of them like to keep a couple of surprises in the back, but I found the second time that he puts it on is probably the most memorable. Like, the second act is the big ticket of the film.
Yeah.
Well, this time around he actually knows what he's doing when he puts it on. So he's trialed it out once, and now we're getting right into it. And, like, again, like, why does he make a point of getting ready? like it's a blue room, but the suit still pops. Like the lighting is so cool.
Yeah.
And is that a bird cage there? Yeah, he's got a bird as well. Yeah, yeah, using the dog. Yeah, and that's another thing as well. Using actors as props. Use the dog as a prop. One of my favorite elements of this costume was I like the bare hands. Like I'm glad they didn't go the Mickey Mouse rubber hose animation and give him those white gloves, because something tells me that was probably in the design somewhere. But I'm glad they left him with bare hands. It's something that I like about Superman. I love how Superman has bare hands when he's in his costume, because like a lot of heroes glove up and that kind of stuff. But the bare hands, and I love the hat with the feather.
Yeah, I quite like how different sort of heroes and characters and that have been designed over the years, with the choice whether to use gloves or not. There's just always probably the most unsettling one for me was Miracle Man's design, where with the red gloves, there's just something a little bit unnerving about it. So I always sort of pay attention to whether they're gloved or not. It's just, yeah, because like Superman doesn't need gloves, and because he's Superman, like the readers and the audience can trust him, but it just seems a bit.
Yeah, like another good sort of contrast is Goku and Vegeta. Vegeta always has gloved hands, and Goku just has the wristbands.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. There's something about bare hands on superheroes that I really enjoy. Yeah, I love the money bags with dollar signs on them, keeping in tune with the cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is probably the real sort of, and this is the bouncer that cut him off at the start of the film, and the felt hat. Very sort of high contrast, isn't it? And it's good because, like putting superheroes in vibrant costumes just wasn't being done at the time. Like everyone was wearing black suits and all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's come quite a fair way now. Like we made a mention of that in the Wolverine discussion, that they after that pretty much every comic book character you can think of was then put in their actual costumes. Now, granted, the yellow suit isn't really a comic exclusive thing, but I can't help but think this film did go a long way in ensuring characters would actually start looking the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, that's really incredible what Marvel did. Because, when you consider the sort of late 90s and early 2000s, like barely any of them looked like their comic book counterpart. But to really embrace, and like I'll always give the MCU credit, they're unashamed, and they shouldn't be ashamed. They're loud, proud superhero fans. We're putting Iron Man in his suit of armor, and it's going to look proper like the comic book. We're not going to do a Judge Dredd and have him in the suit for 5 minutes. Even if it's a big star like Robert Downey Jr., we're going to put Captain America in his proper suit. It's absolutely great, and they really embraced, like some MCU zombies probably won't like hearing this, but and I'm a big fan of some of the movies. Like we did a commentary on a couple of them. They really embrace the over-the-top absurdity of their universe. And I know there's a lot of MCUs going, don't joke, this is serious, but Marvel Conquered the World, when they took on board, like it's like superheroes, they're ridiculous. Have fun with them.
See, and that's something that I really, and there was the B-side to watching the dog whistling, and he's doing it here after watching it on the cartoon, and I really enjoy the contrast. Like, Stanley really enjoys cartoons and comics and those kind of zany sort of mediums, and he really, when he puts the mask on, that sort of bleeds over. A lot of his powers are Looney Tunes-esque, when he's wearing it. It's an awesome foil to that. And yeah,
Why it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked being dark and violent because the mask pretty much makes you unstoppable. And if you've got
you're basically immortal, aren't you? When you put it on, like he can't be killed when he's wearing it. And in the world of Mary Sue's, I mean, which people are so awesome to point out, when he's wearing that, he can't be hurt. You know,
give it to someone who's got homicidal tendencies. It wouldn't be something worth watching, or it certainly wouldn't be, because this was a monster hit when it came out.
This was basically the big blockbuster of the year in '94. Like, yeah, Dumb and Dumber and Ace Ventura were the same year with this, but The Mask was just on a completely different level.
Yeah.
This, and it's one of those where if this didn't happen, like Spider-Man might have very well ended up in more legal turmoil, and comic book films probably wouldn't have taken off till the 2010s.
So because around this era we got a lot of adaptations of the pulp heroes, because we had like the Phantom and the Shadow and the Rocketeer. Although the Rocketeer isn't sort of a pulp hero per se. I think he first came out in the 1980s, but yeah, like some of those characters date back to the 1930s. They tried to go kind of like a throwback to the pulp era.
I do kind of like the phrases that they give the mask, like "smoking," "somebody stop me," and it's something that's seems to be a bit lost. Like, I was revisiting Captain Planet earlier in the week, and like he always had the power is yours. Like He-Man, I have the power. Like Thundercats had their call. I miss heroes having catchphrases, having phrases, and I'm trying to think. With the big two, was there anything like, I mean, with the exception of "I'm your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man," I can't really think of many that have that card. Like in any era. Like it's something that just simply isn't done. It's probably more of a cartoon trait than a comic one.
Yeah, like with the different catchphrases and that. I know there's some individual lines that they say that at the time don't have a lot of insignificance, but they do pay off in huge ways, like down the line. Like the "on your left" line from Captain America has a huge, epic, incredible payoff in Endgame. But yeah, the sort of, like "Dread, I am the law."
Oh yeah, I was meant to point out Eddie over here with the long hair screaming was one of the henchmen in Cliffhanger. Do you remember that?
Yeah, he's got some range, doesn't he? He kind of reminds me of Chris Elliott.
He kind of reminds me of Bob the Goon.
Yeah, the shaggy long hair.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah, just start taking, and it's awesome that he's giving them like the account, because and like I get that it's a skit that the Mask is doing, but he robbed the bank that he works in, so he knows all of that. It's like he's taking the piss. It's like the whole funny because it's true thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, this was really cool seeing, because again, like you've got and also old mate over here shooting at the Mask was one of the henchmen in Cybertracker.
Oh, right. Well, that's well spot. Christ.
Yeah, he's got some range as well. I mean, like two of the evil minion number 4 guys.
The Coco Bongo is a great location as well.
It's an awesome set. Like, I liked when Tina was performing the glittering kind of star lights, and like the sort of, it's not really a tropical theme, it's more of a kind of jungle island theme. It's more, someone would probably say, well, that's what a tropical theme is, dickhead, but it's not a beach theme is what I'm getting at. I think tropical, what separates that is you're on a fucking beach, and there's no beach here, it's just all jungle.
Yeah.
The Coco Bongo is an awesome nightclub. Why couldn't we have something cool like that?
Tell Scarlett I do give a damn.
Yeah, tell Scarlett I do give a damn. So, and we're kind of led to believe that this audience is us here as well.
Yeah.
And I love how Peter Greene like shapes up, like he fixes his hair and all of that. and then he gets stage directions. It's almost like a Snagglepuss thing.
And the henchman's totally lost at sea with his facial expressions.
Yeah. I love how Peter Greene tries to play this down here. Dorian tries to play this down. Like, him and his man are just unloading lead. Hey, Calloway. Then he's like, trying to play it up like nothing was happening. Like, they were just unloading lead all over the place. Yeah, Edge City. It's interesting. I don't really... maybe there is somewhere in the comic that... oh, well, maybe not. But when the tie gets shot off, it turns back into Stanley's pajamas.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing that... I suppose because they needed to tie Calloway with Ipkiss a bit better. Like, Ipkiss needed to become a suspect in some regard. So, when this shows up, it's just an interesting thing why that happens. I mean, like, why doesn't the tie just regenerate or something like that? Like, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. And there's that kind of long-running trope. The cop and the criminal are like on a first-name basis and they know each other. It's kind of a play on... I was reading, I don't know if it's true or not, but in real life, Elliot Ness and Al Capone, I don't think they ever met. Or they may have just met once, like after the arrest, because you spend like years of your life trying to, build a case against someone, and it's just really fun and to see in the movies. It's like they hang out at the same coffee shop and things like that.
Yeah, it's like Bull Hurley and Lincoln Hawk or Hawks.
Yeah,
how are you doing? Better than you.
Yeah, like they're, like the goal is to not even let them know they're being investigated. Like they committing crimes for the case.
I love how Stanley lifts the frisbee up and the dog is like not even on the ground anymore, still hanging onto it. Yeah, like he's not even putting up a fight anymore. Yeah, why don't you just come in? Yeah, I miss that. And I love how this room is just fucking trashed. That's my bedroom, but with a couple of empty beer cans floating around. So when someone comes over and investigates, like, oh yeah, I'll just say, oh, that's from another week.
Like buckling your belt, the gun flies out.
Yeah. All this place needs is a couple of empties, and then you've got my room. One thing behind Calloway, there's another door which leads somewhere else, but it's along the window line. Like, I like sets that are like that, because you wonder, is that like another cupboard, or does that go out to a fire escape, or is it a balcony, or what that is? Like, Ipkiss, like the apartment, this is one of my favourite sets. There's just so much awesome going on here, like the radiator.
Yeah.
And there's a birdcage there, so time to feed parakeet. Yeah, and look at the vault door, it's been ripped completely off.
Yeah.
Which is just so awesome. Yeah, yeah, the profile shot. Yeah, I miss the sort of duo where this is almost like a Pinky and the Brain-esque relationship between Calloway and Doyle. Like, you've got the smaller guy who's a bit more switched on, you got the bigger guy who's not all there completely, or isn't taking it seriously. Like, it's the bulk and skull of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, enough bullshit. Talk price. So, and this is really cool as well. I love when films do this. I know another good film that does this is The Bank Job with Jason Statham from 2008. What I love the most is when the main character of the film is getting hunted by both sides. So you've got Dorian and the underworld and the criminals of the Coco Bongo trying to track the mask, and you've got law enforcement looking into Stanley Ipkiss, and they're both the same guy. I love when movies do that, when they're just copying it from both sides and there's no way out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really cool. Helps keep the plot chugging along.
Like, you're just sandwiched in between, like, this rock and a hard place. There's no way out. Say goodnight, Denise. I mean, that's what he should have done.
Yeah. Look at the look on her face. She can't stand the prick.
And I love how every time Stanley comes into work, he looks more and more like this is me going into work on a Monday morning.
Yeah.
Here.
Even more disheveled, yeah.
Yeah. And I love putting this bloke on blast.
Yeah, this guy's good. It's a very thankless role, and he's great.
Like he's only in 3 scenes, but they're a good 3 scenes.
Yeah.
It's like he gives Ipkiss a spray, like the place has been robbed. Like Ipkiss, like, you're trying to tell me if he was there on time, the place would be any less robbed? It's like when people make a big deal out of Clark Kent, like they make a big deal out of Superman. How can no one figure out that Clark Kent is Superman? Do you think he's any less bulletproof when he's at work?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, Charlie. I've had some mates like this, eh? Like, I mean, just constantly wanting to go out all the time. Like, I can't even remember the last time I've been out. Now that I think about it, like the last beer I've ever had in a pub, like, was at the Dirty Harry bar in Movie World with my old boy.
Yeah.
If that's off the table, when's the last time I've gone to a pub or a club and had a drink?
Yeah, I
Probably
think
2015 or 16, maybe, was the last time I've been out.
yeah, you do tend to age out of it, and sort of like talking to people, like the COVID has kind of killed a lot of it as well. Just sort of wasn't the same once everything kind of reopened.
Yeah, that's true as well. I think because, being in lockdown for 2 or 3 years or whatever, wherever you are in the world, depending on how long it was, you kind of realise just how unnecessary it is. And people pick up different hobbies in the lockdown, like they start reading, like they start drawing, they start developing other hobbies.
It only takes a month or two to form a new hobby, and depending on where you were, there was, and also once they were allowed to reopen, there was, only sort of restrictions on people and other things like that, and it sort of killed the whole fun and vibe of it. But it's so just what's she doing here? Why is she seeing Stanley? Because Dorian sent her, right?
I'm guessing so, because they were meant to knock over the heist and she was filling out opening up a new account, so there's not much point doing that if there's no payoff anymore. So I think that was the whole point. She was going in there to nuke the cover story.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, because why would they? And also, you got to remember the doctor's been killed as well. At this point, the black fellow that got shot, he was in charge of knocking out all the security of the bank. So they're not even equipped to do the heist anymore, and there's no payload anymore. I love how Stanley does the quick Michael Jackson slide over to her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
Ben
it seems to,
Stein. Very interesting guy.
Oh yeah, this fella.
Yeah, you were saying about Stan.
Yeah, he's got just terrific chemistry with pretty much everyone. I don't think there's a single film I've seen of his where everyone's not good around him.
Especially the way that he plays off of Matthew Broderick as well, and not just steamrolling him in The Cable Guy. It's really cool.
Tide lifts all ships.
Not to mention, he's very good at getting actors to break character as well in takes that make it into the final movie. Like, I know Liar Liar is full of them.
Yeah, okay. I'll have to revisit that one as well.
Yeah.
Because I remember liking that when I watched it.
Yeah, Carrie Elwes, man, as the new boyfriend. And this is the first restriction we actually get on what the mask can do. When he made, the Norse night god Loki, it's probably based on that, and we get a little bit of the origin here, and we get the first thing that the mask can't do. It's still daylight, he puts it on and it doesn't work. So this is the first sort of real kryptonite moment the mask gets. Actually, it's probably the only one that it gets. You can only use it at night. Yeah, Ben Stein. I think a lot of people will remember Ben Stein from Ferris Bueller's Day Off as the voodoo economics teacher.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
anyone?
always good to have these weird, quirky rules. Like, Superman, he can see through everything except lead. It's just this weird sort of quirk, and it gives these powers a really nice flavor.
You know what I love the most? People say Superman's too overpowered. Why can't he see through lead? Are the
I
same
think it's
people.
great. Yeah,
Yeah,
like what a
I love
written
it.
rule.
And when villains play to their strengths and bear that in mind, they can easily get the better of him.
Um, yeah, it can only be worn at night, or it only works at night. Yeah, don't let them eat after midnight.
Yeah. Anyone? Anyone, please? Anyone? Something DOO economics. Oh yeah, and he also rocks up Dr. Arthur Newman. He even rocks up in the animated series, voiced by Ben Stein as well. I quite like that in like a series that has like a couple films, a cartoon, a video game, and all that kind of stuff. I love how there's like one original actor that's in all of it. And in
Yeah.
this case, Ben Stein is in the Son of the Mask sequel with Jamie Kennedy and Alan Cumming. Like, he rocks up in that. He voices the same character in the cartoon. Like his likeness is in the game. I just love how there's one guy who is just in all of it, and it's a guy who's in one scene. Like, he's a C-list character in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. I wonder, although I probably would kind of ruin it, less is more. They use Loki from Norse mythology as a sort of driving force. Because I mean, the Norse mythology is just so rich and epic and mythic. I wonder if they were tempted to introduce more elements, but that would probably ruin it. Like less is more.
I love the skyline here of like I mean, it's clearly CG and all this kind of stuff, but I love the skyline here and the methane emissions.
Yeah,
Like Edge, I love how Edge City, when you see it in like its establishing shot, it's like just this gas-ridden, polluted sort of place. Like, everyone is just interested in partying all the time to diminish their worries.
yeah, just a sort of decadent society.
Like, just numb yourself with alcohol and partying. Yeah, this is so cool again. Like, the costume design on this. And, like, I know the film had a toy line, and his three big costumes had separate toys, like his black tux at the end of the film, the yellow zoot suit, and the red smoking jacket, the robe. All of those had toys. I'm not too sure if, like, his French one and, like, the balloon circus attire or any of those got toys. It'd be cool if they did another toy line for this, like do like a Hot Toys thing and all of that.
Yeah, I'm surprised they haven't already.
I mean, it's prime for it. Like, he's got so many awesome outfits in the film. I thought it was pretty cool. What does he say to her? I mean, you'd probably get me too for doing it today, but what does he say to her? Like Napoleon, I will divide and conquer.
Christ.
Well, no one Jim Carrey was probably ab-libbed.
Yeah, because I remember, like when this came out, it got huge sort of promotion and marketing. It was a huge movie, and like everyone was well aware that it was a big deal. I could never quite sort of go along wholeheartedly for the ride. My friends were way more into it than I was because I could never quite get a handle on his sort of powers and what he was about and things like that. I found myself sort of gravitating more towards Dick Tracy and sort of other films at the time, but I've certainly revisited it a lot, over the sort of years, and it's definitely like a really good movie. But yeah, like because I remember one friend in particular was absolutely obsessed with it. He had the the official making of book. He had the trading cards. He was just so excited to finally see it when it did come out.
Yeah, and it was one of those kind of mid-year films when it came out.
Yeah,
Like, it wasn't like back when big films weren't released at fucking Christmas time. Like every trailer you see these days is like this Christmas.
yeah. Well, Titanic changed that because Christmas time used to be the graveyard, where you dropped off turkeys that you didn't, because no one goes to the movies at Christmas. Now everyone does. Titanic changed that.
How awesome was it? Picture of Calloway's wife. Margaret, you son of a bitch! I still crack up at this one. Jeez, I figured you had a sense of humour. After all, you married her. I miss when they do this bit here. Yeah, I miss when they did things like that. Yeah, the mask. And see, that's something that I quite enjoy about the title of the character as well. I love how there's not like a name for Stanley when he puts it on. It's just called The Mask. Like, that's all it is. Like, I quite like that trick of just calling it that. Like, just call it for what it is, even if it's being worn or not. It's just called The Mask.
Yeah, there's been a couple of cool takes on it. There was a short-lived television series called The Cape, about, funnily enough, a magic cape, and there was also a comic book miniseries called The Cape as well, but that was a little bit sort of darker and more sinister. Kind of sort of went down the path of that sort of movie Chronicle, where they get superpowers and it turns out not to be all that healthy for them. So yeah, it's the magic whatever, and you just follow that character with it.
Little thing here, the Cuban Pete moment. This Spanish-Mexican outfit that he gets on here. If you've ever played through the SNES game, just stand idle for a couple of animations, and it's actually one of the idle animations. He'll put this on and get the maracas out.
Yeah, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, using the parking meter as a dancing pole. Yeah. Yeah, this, the whole, like, I love how the entire police force just happens to be there as well. Like, they're taking no chances with this guy. But having said that, like, in the comic, I believe a similar thing happens, but he just kills them all.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an intriguing story, but I probably wouldn't be interested in watching it.
Yeah, it probably, like, gave birth to things like Deadpool. I love how even though the dancing magic is working on this policewoman, she still smacks him. Yeah, like, I thought that was really cool. And they've got and the only, after doing all the bolts and chains and the planks on the Botanic Gardens to lock them out, the only two people that actually got locked out were Doyle and Calloway, where the entire force was already there. So the only people who have to go through the trouble of scaling the wall are the two that are most devoted to getting him.
Yeah.
It was just a thing at the time, man. You had to get smug authority figures getting their comeuppance. And yeah, here we go. I love how he did. And like, doesn't he like pash up some woman in the street when he runs past? See, this is another thing as well. Like, even if they did do another film today and they did make it more like the comic, or they tried to recapture what they did here, I don't think there's any sort of right way to do it. You know, like, I kind of think this was one of those things where it needed to happen when it did. I mean, it would be, it's an intriguing idea to think of what a new Mask film would be like, regardless of who it ends up being. I just don't think there's much appetite for it anymore, because you've got a talking fucking raccoon, for God's sake, in MCU movies now. Like, there's not really a void that the Mask can fill, and you've got Deadpool now as well.
Yeah, I was wondering during the week why it really hasn't been revisited. There's a couple of things counting against it. There's not a lot of source material for a start. You'll never find anyone that could play it as well as Jim Carrey. And the fact that the second one, which arrived eventually, was just a stone cold flop. Like it was a notorious flop.
It was about a decade later as well, after the fact, that
Yeah, to the
happened.
point where I was surprised it was released theatrically. I was quite surprised to read that, yeah, Son of the Mask did come out in theaters. I always just assumed it was direct to video. It may have even been, once it flopped hard in America, maybe in some parts of the world it was direct to video, because I don't ever recall, because I was a pretty avid movie goer at that point
I
in
think it was
time.
2005, I think, was Son
Yeah,
of the Mask.
yeah, I'd go to the movies a couple of times a week back then. And I was really into movies at that time, but I don't ever recall that one being screening. So whether they kind of knew it because it had flopped overseas, maybe they just sort of released it for a week or two to tick the box and then shuttled it away. But that sort of killed dead any sort of potential revival, I'm guessing, as well. It's a numbers game at the end of the day.
I totally love this this moment here where he gets totally cock blocked and backstabbed and
Oh yeah, she sells him out. Yeah,
yeah, well, don't worry, not all women are like that. Yeah, no, I just thought, well, what I mean is, I find it so awesome, and this was probably the only way you could do it, was that, like, you got Dorian and Kellaway after him. The only one who could really trick this guy or trap him is a woman to do it.
yeah.
You know, because he's like this love-crazy fucking maniac every time he puts it on.
Yeah, it's so unexpected as well.
That a woman is the one that captures him. Like, I'm like, it makes perfect sense that a woman would get the better of him.
You're gonna drop him into the printing press.
Yeah, so this was the other deleted moment, and these were filmed as well, I believe. Well, this one definitely was. I think this was even on the DVD. Peggy's death. Dorian puts the mask on, and he throws her into the printing press, and she gets made into a newspaper.
Wow.
And that's her death. Not that she didn't have it coming, but I mean, it was a quick payday selling out a guy who robbed the place that he worked at. Does that deserve getting thrown into a printing press? Probably not. So I'm glad they brought Peggy back for the cartoon. I don't think it was a killable offense. Let's just put it that way. Like, have you ever killed anyone? Yes, but they were all bad. This was very, very chilling, this. Like, and I love the sort of like the big chin, like the Joker. Like, you know, yeah, it's really cool how they apply the prosthetics here. And like, instead of like the teeth are all dirtied up and like broken and stuff when Dorian puts it on. And yeah, I always love the pun. Money better be there, Ip Kiss, or you can Ip Kiss your ass goodbye. Yeah, I miss the pun. And back to the animal acting. Like, there's some really cool stuff with I believe the dog's name in real life was Max.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, playing Milo here. Like, the dog is doing double takes and all sorts of stuff. Like, looking away, looking back, like double taking. It's some really high acting. Like, we've seen things like I Am Legend and, you know, 101 Dalmatians live action and that kind of stuff, where, you know, like Cats and Dogs, you know, all that kind of thing. But this is some of the best animal acting I think I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah, I have a book about dogs in the movies. I was quite surprised, just sort of looking for stuff to talk about tonight. I was quite surprised that Milo didn't have an entry in it.
Well, like, another one is Gizmo, and that little chihuahua which pops into my head, Paulie Shore's dog, Peanut in Jury
Yeah.
Duty.
I think what counted against him is even though they're crucial to the sort of plot in the final act going forward, the movie's not really about them. Whereas, you know, Lassie and Old Yeller and Marley and Me, like, the dogs are pretty much
Well, they're in the title of the film, for
Yeah.
God's sake. Like,
Yeah, so
well,
I think,
I mean, it's called The Mask, and Milo does wear the mask.
yeah.
I
But I
mean,
mean, if Puffy from There's Something About Mary got an entry and Milo didn't, it doesn't seem fair to me.
yeah, I'm actually quite shocked now that you mentioned that Milo and oh man, I just love this. Like the prison itself looks like what you'd see in a cartoon.
Yeah.
Like you got to squeeze through the bars and all
It's
of that.
um, it's almost sort of Tim Burton-esque the way like Edward Scissorhands was constructed, and like the town where that's set in. It looks like something out of a storybook or a comic book.
Yeah, Milo. Yeah, the dog really is. I mean, like if this dog doesn't do what it's about to do, like the rest of the film doesn't happen. So yeah, I think that's a gross oversight, and they'll rue the day for not putting him in that.
Yeah, because it's so unexpected. But I guess we'll talk about it when we get to it. When the dog puts the mask on, we'll stay with it, Kiss, for the moment.
I love how this is another thing that I like the most when two people are having a tender moment. And you've got someone else who's actually in the scene, like you had that security guard, but I love how he doesn't pipe up until they go for the kiss. And then he's like, "Time's up, Ipkiss." Like, I mean, and he even makes a point of, "You couldn't have given me just one more second."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, and it's always good when a film can execute this properly. You have the sort of the femme fatale who you think is the villain at the start is actually a good, kind-hearted person, whereas the the seemingly good female character at the start turns out to be the villain who
like
plays
she's not even all that thrilled about being a performer. Like, what about the singing? I thought you were doing great. Like, she's not all that crazy about even doing that.
Yeah.
It just sounds like Ipkiss needs a good gobby whenever he puts the mask on.
Christ.
Well, I know they make a big point out of that in the comic. He's a bit like that. Yeah, actually, this is probably the time to talk about it. I love how there's because we live in the whole go woke go broke era now, and people talking about, oh yeah, they're gonna reboot the mask with a female wearing the mask. Oh yeah, do it. It's going to be terrible. Well, we've already seen that in the original comic in the animated series.
Yeah.
We've seen women put the mask on, and you don't really lose anything. It's still doing what it does. It's like GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. Oh well, Perfect Dark's a woman, but you don't lose anything. Like it plays just like GoldenEye. It's the same. Like when you because he picks up another girlfriend in the first season of the cartoon. She's only in like one episode, and she puts it on, and just it's basically it acts exactly how Stanley wears it. You lose nothing. I don't think a female mask is the big deal breaker that people say that it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's time they bring in the laser bars. Like that Ed City Police thing. Like that's up there with you're right. Tim Burton-esque is a good way to say it. Like that's easily comparable to Gotham, the City Hall, from the Michael Keaton movies. It looks exactly the same.
The Edward Scissorhands as well, where she has to take him to the bank, and it's just this big sign, bank, like almost like it's something out of a storybook, yeah, like a fairy tale.
I totally love that. I miss that.
I've known one person in my entire life that does that. Puts toilet paper on the toilet seat. If they're using a toilet they've never used before. I've only ever met one person in my entire life that admitted to doing that. I'm not even sure what got us on that conversation, but there you go.
Fucking all right. Oh well, look, I just do the Danny McBride when it comes to things like that. Look, it's not just for my protection. You don't know what crazy shit I've got either.
Yeah, I just channel a bit of Cousin Eddie. Shit is full.
Yeah, shit is full. Yeah, can you look after the TVs for a sec? I gotta go snap off a deuce. Jesus, I tell you, these Jack Russell Terriers are so fucking nimble. Like I tell you, like this new one that we got at the house, the way that he can jump, I mean, it's just crazy how high these things can jump.
So what was there? Were they like bred to hunt rabbits or something? I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up as well. But yeah, Jack Russell Terriers. Yeah, you know, it's one of those. I mean, how does it go again? Like, yeah, they're a small dog, but they got balls like shot puts. I like Dorian's jacket here.
Yeah, he's pretty smart, pretty sharply dressed.
I mean, well, he's in the end zone now. He's got no reason to fear his ultimatum of leaving town now that he's got the mask on. So you just go and eliminate the threat, which he does tonight. And I love that as well. We know that the mask only works at night, and you see that like the sun's kind of going down in this alleyway. Like the lighting is starting to get a bit more of a cooler tone to it.
Yeah, it's something I never picked up on when I watched this as a kid. Like a lot of scenes are set in the afternoon, sort of mid to late afternoon, but yeah, until you realise, yeah, the mask only works at night, so it's sort of like a harbinger of things to come.
I think from a technical standpoint, the reason they kind of steer clear, like unless it's set like midday or midnight, because you've really got to get the take just spot on, because like if you don't, you're losing the twilight.
Yeah, it's probably most noticeable when Dorian was talking to the other gang leaders, where it's almost like the film's making a point to show that the sun is setting behind him.
Yeah, this is probably the ultimate. I mean, Michael Schofield's got nothing on Stanley Ipkiss here. See, and like that's what I mean. Like the dog is doing double takes. It's so cool. Yeah, again, it's and this is something that, I mean, I suppose the MCU zombies. See, I don't like. It's a good point that you brought up during the Coco Bongo that like everything needs to be dead serious. It's something that's always annoyed me about the Nolanoids of Batman. It needs to be grounded and realistic. It's a grown man who dresses up as a fucking bat. Like, it stop taking it so serious. You know, like it's like I miss the days where you could have fun with a character like that. It's something even Kev Smith said about The Dark Knight Rises. You got to remember, back in like the 70s and the 80s, no one would let you make a movie this stupidly serious about a character this ridiculous.
Yeah, it turns out he had a point. It's, well, although to their credit, they have sort of tried to strike a better balance. They did the Brave and the Bold cartoon, which I absolutely loved, and they revived Batman 66, albeit in comic book form, and that's a really fun book. Oof.
Yeah, I missed the classic pistol whip.
Yeah, and of course the guard has fallen asleep.
Yeah, that's where I was going with it. I missed the guard sleeping, and I don't know about you, man, but staring at computer screens all day, the fatigue really sets in. Yeah, this was really cool. There's no way you're walking out of here like this, and like the dog doesn't tip anyone off. I love how the cops are using revolvers as well. See, it's something that I think really helps, because like when things like Heat started coming out the year after, they were all Berettas, they were all 9mm, they were all slamming clips in and being edgy like that. Like I just miss cops using revolvers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just something always about, like, they use revolvers all the time in the Batman movies. Check his wallet.
Yeah, check his wallet.
And this is another trick that I like as well when films do this. Having Ipkiss turn around to the camera so the audience can see he's still holding him at gunpoint.
Yeah.
But I love it. Doyle doesn't even catch on to the fact that Ipkiss got in the driver's seat. Oh, I love it. So cool. This has got to be one of Cameron Diaz's best costumes she's ever worn. The one that she uses in the finale here.
Yeah, I'll have to make a point to look up her filmography because all I really remember from her is the this and of course there's something about Mary and Charlie, the first Charlie's Angels, because I remember that movie because like it's one of those movies I had to be dragged along. It didn't seem to really appeal to me, but I really enjoyed it. It's a really fun film. Never really bothered with the other ones in the series. So I've heard of stuff she's been in that I haven't seen, but yeah, I'll have to
Yeah. One that pops into mind was the one with Christina Applegate and Selma Blair. That The Sweetest Thing. I think Thomas Jane was in that as well.
Yeah, that's one I have seen.
Yeah,
but like she was in one with Tom Cruise that I never got around to, and like other things like that.
Yeah. This pink sort of effect here reminds me of Batman Forever when Two-Face, after the Ritz Gotham moment, and tries to bury Bruce in the construction, like there's when Dick Grayson saves him. I like that sort of pink mist, fog, dirt sort of look. Really cool.
Yeah.
So this is something that really gets me when films try to be super hyper realistic all the time. We're talking about The Mask, for God's sake. Like, don't ever say realistic and The Mask in the same sentence ever again, people. What bugs me about films is the more realistic you make them, the less creative you can be with them.
Yeah. Sort of putting the handcuffs on yourself if you make it.
Yeah, if you make it hyper realistic, then you can't do anything awesome. It's like when people say, "Oh, in real life that would never happen." That's why it's a movie, people.
Yeah, I've got a good story about that. I'll probably tell that in the closing credits. It's just ridiculous. We'll stay with Dorian. Because I thought the film made a misstep with him putting on the mask, but I understand it's somewhat true to the, sort of initial comic book.
Yeah.
How the mask does change possession several times. So I always sort of thought it may have made a misstep because, like, the more wielders you have of it, the less special Stanley becomes. But I understand that, like, it has to do it to establish the point because, like, it's funny when I watched it years ago as a kid. It goes from a point where it may have misstumbled, but Milo putting the mask on just blew everyone away. It's so unexpected and awesome.
It probably is the ultimate subversion, isn't it?
Yeah, because no one would have predicted that. And anyone who says they did is not being...
I would need to go back and look at some of the marketing material. Did they keep their pants on with Milo putting the mask on through all of the marketing and only left that in the final film? Because if they did... Thank God that was kept a secret until you went and saw the movie.
Yeah, yeah. From memory, I wasn't expecting it. And like I mentioned earlier, this was very heavily marketed, but may have, like it has been 30 years though, so I may have forgotten, but yeah, it was totally unexpected watching it as a kid.
It makes so much sense though, like anything can actually put it on.
Yeah.
and one thing that's cool when Milo puts it on is he seems to mimic a lot of the traits from his owner. I mean, Stanley is obviously the human that Milo spends the most time with. When Milo puts the mask on, it's very awesome that he mimics some of those traits. One thing about Charlie there wearing the white James Bond tux, sorry. It's pretty cool how Stanley handed him a Walther PPK then.
Yeah, right.
So Charlie is like literally in a James Bond cosplay. Yeah, that was really cool, that. Oh, well, you got to remember the marketing machine for GoldenEye probably kicked off around this time as well, because that came out the next year.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. When some random, it's a trait that needs to come back. I think when some random thug gets the better of the hero like that.
Yeah, and it's so clever. And people bagged Avatar too for doing that. They bust their asses to rescue this character, and then she runs back in and gets immediately captured again. I loved it. Yeah, like we're gonna go in and save her, and he gets caught straight away.
Yeah, I just love when some random thug gets the better of the main character. Like, one of the probably more prominent examples of it is TR-8R in The Force Awakens. Just some random no-name fucking hick stormtrooper just starts
Yeah,
pounding the shit out of Finn. Like,
yeah, that was good.
like he's just having such a nightmare trying to defeat just a random no-name. Like, that's what I think this new Superman film needs to do. Just have some random guy off the street, dressed like Kyle Reese in the original Terminator, just pounding Superman into the dirt. Like, that's what they need to do.
Yeah, it's something Paul Dini has talked about. And I like it as well. I love when ordinary people give you shit. Like, who decides to rob a bank in Metropolis? Like, seriously. Um, so I kind of like those stories where he goes up against inner gang and other things like that.
Now, this is the moment I was talking about. The frisbee in the apartment at the start was the A side. This is a really cool B side of the mask spinning like a frisbee. So, of course, Milo catches it. Like, I'll throw it one time, but it's spinning like a frisbee. These kind of moments make or break a movie for me, and this absolutely nails it. Of course, Milo catches it. And I don't know. Maybe other Jack Russell owners out there know exactly what I'm talking about. Have you ever tried to catch one of these things when they're spry? It is such a pain in the ass. Like, so the fact that 10 guys can't catch a dog is just so cool. I mean, like, that is so true to life. That, yeah,
Yeah,
here we go. This is the real, subverted I mean, who thought this was bad? Honestly,
yeah, this is great.
I will say I love the fight between these two. Like, this is probably one of the coolest movie fights of all time. Just these two. I mean, Stanley's a bank clerk, for God's sake. Probably never been in a fight in his life. And yeah, just these two pounding each other. And it's awesome that how Milo has that fine chain around his neck, but when he puts the mask on, it even warps his clothing in a sense by giving him a spiky collar.
Yeah.
So it's awesome how it sort of morphs his clothes as well, in a way. Yeah, this here, like this fucking monster combo from Killer Instinct that Stanley lays on him. I've always wanted to meme that moment when Stanley is just throwing these punches at Dorian, and I wanted to put the word common sense on Dorian's face, because common sense seems to be taking a pounding these days, isn't it? Oh, God, it's so cool. And I suppose, I mean, it makes for a much cooler moment when they fight with no mask involved, because obviously it becomes a one-sided fight very quickly. It's like when people say, well, why was Gettysburg blinded when he fighted Tenzin? Well, because it's not much of a fight if you could just kill him with a look. So you kind of need to level the playing field a little bit. And they even make the character moment of, like, the mask going like when the dog takes it off. And they really got the, like, we visit the Coco Bongo, like, main party area, or, like, main, event area about 3 times in the film, and each time it's totally different. I like when sets get topped up like that. They get redecorated. Like, they got the slot machines in there for the finale, and, like, the big piggy bank that was hanging from the roof. it you revisit the set 3 times in the film, but each time it's entirely different. You don't sort of click that it is the same set.
Yeah.
I mean, get the most out of it. Like it's the location as a character, yeah. Yeah, this was pretty cool, the Clint Eastwood moment. How far removed is this from that movie?
Oh, Dirty Harry. Yeah, quite a bit. I think Dirty Harry came out in the 70s. So yeah, it is. Although I think there's 3 or 4 of them. It could have bled over into the 80s as well.
Oh, well, also, apparently Jim Carrey, I don't know if it was a credited appearance or not, but one of the first things he was ever in was the Deadpool with Clint Eastwood, so it might have even been a little nod to that.
Yeah, there was Sudden Impact, the Deadpool, and I think 1 or 2 more.
That's cultural appropriation. Yeah, here we go. I love this. You pull out the switchblade. You don't see that anymore in movies. Yeah, the switchblade, the butterfly knife.
Yeah, not in this part of the world. You don't tell all of these banned.
This guy's incorrigible. Yeah, see, I love how Stanley, the mask, makes a point to look at the viewer when he says that. Like he knows that we're there. It's the second time in the film. Oh, well, not really. There's about 3 or 4 instances where he talks directly to the audience when he wears the mask. Like, look, Ma, I'm roadkill.
Yeah.
Like, he's constantly acknowledging the fact that we're there. And it's interesting that you mentioned Elliot Ness and Al Capone and all of that. I love how he's literally wearing a suit from that period in the finale.
Yeah, and he got done for, like, tax evasion of all things. So there you go.
Well, I ain't no Wesley Snipes. And I'm not. That's something else that's really cool as well, is that wearing the mask and then taking it off, you'll notice that it doesn't actually heal Stanley. So any injury that he has prior to putting the mask on, he's fighting fit while wearing the mask, but when it comes off, his body still has to naturally heal if he incurred an injury pre-putting it on. So there are these kind of little things that are there. And that's pretty cool that the landlady was there in the finale as well. Mrs. Peenman, just giving that copper spray.
Yeah, it's a good skill to pull off how they all converge, all the subplots and main plot comes together.
Yeah, like Groundhog Day, when they're all in the dance hall at the end.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I never understood the white tux. You know, like I like the color white. I wish I could wear it more, but except I just look shit wearing white. So I could never pull off the white tux, but I've always admired guys that can.
Yeah,
it's very tricky to pull off.
It'd be a prick to keep clean.
That's true as well, and I don't trust myself. I mean, the lick won't come from me. Yeah, I love that. You gotta have the cop get a serve. It was pretty cool. Like I remember seeing some of the premiere photos of this a couple months back when people were talking about the 30th coming up. It's really awesome that the dog got a ride in the limousine as well. Like they had Cameron Diaz is holding the dog at the red carpet.
Yeah, and it's good when they're on their way to the nightclub while that's in the shot as well with the cop.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Ipkiss, get your dog away from me. And like, yeah, it's really cool. Awesome. Yeah, and I love this sort of daybreak here. And again, like, there's no sort of, you're not seeing like a Chrysler building. You're not seeing like the Trade Center or anything. Like, you know, like Ed City does look fictitious. Like it hasn't got anything familiar in its skyline. Which is something that I enjoy. Like, nothing annoys me more than seeing Gotham City in a film today and it looks like Pittsburgh. I love how Ed City doesn't look like a famous city that you'd recognize something from. And the music of this film, which is something is just something else entirely. I mean, the whole track is just a banger. I do like the getting rid of the mask moment. It's a good piece, that. And again, the mask is thrown like a frisbee, and the dog goes and gets it. Which again sort of sets up, I don't think it was setting up a sequel or anything like that, but it does pave way to the animated series that came after that. I love the trash cans and the very, very 90s-esque, isn't it?
Yeah, the really spectacular the way they used the sets in this and the locations. Jim Carrey's not a fan of sequels, I was reading.
Which is interesting because he's done 3 sequels to my knowledge. There was the Ace Ventura one, there was Dumb and Dumber 2, and I think Sonic 2 was the other one. Funny enough, though, he says he's open to doing another Mask film, but look, I love Jim Carrey all the world. He's still very spry for his age. Maybe this is one we let go, mate. I would like to see it. I just don't think a 60-year-old Stanley Ipkiss is gonna have the kind of pull that he had. Is all.
Yeah, and I guess those other ones were kind of different because he's Dumb and Dumber. He's the lead, but it's very much Jeff Daniels as well. And with Sonic, he's not the main character in it. He's the villain. So it's interesting. He said because he was quoted as because he did the sequel to Ace Ventura and didn't have the best experience on it. So he kind of went cold on the idea back in the day, back in the 90s, of doing a sequel to this. But yeah, it's interesting.
All right, mate. You got to tell that story about the it wasn't very realistic.
Oh yeah, well that happened this week when the Gladiator 2 trailer dropped. Now they showed this trailer at some film festival conference a couple of months ago, but it was behind closed doors, but word leaked out, and it sounds amazing. And I've gone from having zero interest in it to really excited about it. So apparently there's a sequence in this Gladiator 2 film where they flood the Colosseum and let fucking sharks loose in it. It sounds bloody insane. I'm so excited about it, and it's true. The opening shots of the trailer have this huge Colosseum in water, and one of the gladiators gets knocked off this boat or this sort of floating platform and gets devoured by sharks. And you just knew. You go onto Reddit to sort of share some excitement, and there's cunts on there. Oh, it's fake. That's not realistic. Fuck off. Let me enjoy it.
What were you expecting? It to be a fucking National Geographic documentary on realism?
Yeah. And then it sparked this whole debate about maybe it was true. Like, for Christ's sake,
it's
guys, can't you just enjoy it? I think that is the gnarliest thing ever, to have an aquatic gladiator battle. And there's going to be rhinos in it, which is apparently something they wanted to do for the first film, but it would have been too expensive. So it looks insane. They actually flood the Colosseum and let sharks loose in there. Well, like, if you stop and think about it, it makes no goddamn sense at all, but I don't care. I'm so excited to see that.
Well, Halo wasn't very realistic.
Yeah, I disagree. I think it's very realistic.
I think it was very realistic.
Yeah, so, Gladiator 2, drawing a longbow from the mask, but yeah, that sort of point you made about people not thinking it's good because it's not realistic, it made me think of that, because the trailer for that dropped earlier this week.
If I wanted realism so badly, I'd just go to work.
Yeah, that's right. Like, I want spectacular action scenes. I don't care if they're not realistic.
Yeah, it's like when people talk about the realism of Jurassic World, like compared to the realism of Jurassic Park. What fucking planet are you living on? Like, the realism of... There's this misconception going around that the Jurassic franchise is realistic. It's not. Like, surviving the car fall into the tree from the T-Rex outbreak, it's fucking ridiculously over the top.
Yeah.
And it's good that it is.
Yeah,
it's part of why it's so cool, because you can do awesome stuff with it. Like in The Lost World, hanging the trailer over the cliff. Oh, no one would survive that. It's just a movie, and it's an awesome sequence.
Yeah,
Like,
and the only reason that gets a pass is because people saw it as a kid and loved it. If that had come out today, you'd be getting ripped to shreds as well.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I love it. I mean, it's just having fun. You know,
Yeah.
why is having fun so illegal? You're not allowed to have fun. You're not allowed to enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
Like, and
It's
there's literally a line in the original JP going, I mean, Donald, dear boy, relax, try and enjoy yourself.
yeah.
I can't believe people have trouble doing that. People
Yeah,
just can't
I
enjoy themselves anymore.
yeah, I channel a bit of Michael Caine. If you go into a movie trying to have some fun, you might have a little bit by accident.
Yeah, it reminds me of that funny clip of Freddie Prinze Jr. on in Scooby Doo. He says the only meme or whatever I saw of Scooby Doo was when the cast are talking about the film from 2002, like it's going to be some Oscar nominated production, and then it cuts to me, and I'm just like, it's a talking dog. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's all. It's a talking fucking dog, man. Like, just have some fun with it. Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's and this is what this film does. It just has fun, and it's always a treat. It always gives me a smile every time I see it. I mean, you're in and you're out. It's not 2 hours long. It clips along very nice, and I have a lot of love for the era that it came out in. So yeah, this one's always a big ups for me.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, like I mentioned, because I do remember when this came out as a kid, and yeah, there was one friend in particular who was yeah, just so excited about it. He like sort of actively followed it, and yeah, just couldn't wait to see it. He passed away a couple of years ago in 2017, but I always remembered just what a hardcore fan of this film he was. And yeah, I sort of said, like, as a kid watching it, it was kind of hard to get into it. I couldn't get a good bead on his powers and just what he could and couldn't do. But it ain't that kind of movie. It really isn't. And once you let that go, you have a lot of fun with it. And yeah, like every time I watch it, it gets that little bit better, which is great. And that, you know, to me, that is a sign that it does really hold up, and it's a well-made film. When you revisit something sort of in the interim between years, if it still holds up and you like it that little bit more. See, I liked it even more tonight than watching it sort of last week, and I last saw it several years ago, and it sort of, yeah, it holds up better. It gets a little bit better each time, and yeah, I've had a lot of fun tonight discussing it.